Live from San Francisco, it's theCUBE, covering Red Hat Summit 2016. Brought to you by Red Hat. Now, here are your hosts, Stu Miniman and Brian Gracely.
Welcome back. We're here for the final wrap-up of day 3 of 3 days of coverage at Red Hat Summit 2016. You've been watching SiliconANGLE Media's flagship program, theCUBE. We go out to all the big enterprise shows, help extract the signal from the noise. Brian, it's the 12th year of the show. It's our 3rd year doing theCUBE here. What's your big takeaways so far?
Big takeaways for me, growing community, lots of positive energy. The feedback from everybody was they liked the balance between Red Hat technology, community technology. We saw a lot of really interesting just projects, everything from JPL taking people to the moon, we saw cancer research, we saw a little bit of everything in between, which is inspiring. So there was a bit of technology, a bit of inspiration, a bit of community, pretty interesting balance all week.
Yeah, let's start with the company itself. So Red Hat, they've done over $2 billion worth of revenue last year. They think a $12 billion valuation for the company. At their core is Linux. Yep. It's RHEL, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. It's been the core of what they've been doing for a number of years. And what I like about the strategy is they've got a bunch of things they're adding onto it, and most of those they pull the Linux piece into it, extending the value of Linux, extending open source. It's good strategy, limited strategy. What's your take?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I think obviously we're seeing Linux become more and more prevalent. I mean, we heard the folks from HPE talk about banking applications moving off of mainframes. So the trend is more and more things moving to Linux, whether it's software-defined networking, software-defined storage. But at the same time, we're also seeing more and more applications moving into the public cloud where they may use other choices for Linux. So I think it's building off of strength. Paul Cormier yesterday talked about, if you want to be in containers, you've got to be a Linux provider. So they're building off their strength. The puck is kind of coming towards them, as Dave likes to look at. So I think it's a good strategy. I think it's the strategy they have to have, and over time we'll see how some of these additional things pan out in terms of revenue and in terms of reach.
Yeah, absolutely. Containers, developers. Red Hat talked about about both of those this week. As you said, the Gretzky quote, skating to the puck. Most customers, is the messaging a little bit ahead where customers are? Yes, but that's okay. Yeah. What do you the message though that basically, Linux and containers go together. As you, Brian, look at, 12-factor applications, microservices and things like that. Does the Linux matter? Does the operating system matter? Can those two be pulled apart? Is that a potential danger for Red Hat down the road? Yeah,
I mean, technology-wise, you don't necessarily have to link your container technology to your OS. I think in reality, as you start to look at operation-wise, we heard a number of stories about how do I secure it? How do I do patch management? How am I going to do operations? What's the tooling around that? I think the reality is we hear from customers all day long. I want things to be simpler. I want less friction. The roll your own sort of container model is going to struggle, just like we've seen roll your own converged infrastructure, roll your own private cloud. I think it gives them a very strong position, and we'll see where that goes. But customers want simplicity. They want stuff to just kind of work.
Yeah, one of the things that always gets a lot of headlines. It's the cloud wars. It's the container. Who's real? Who's imitation? Who's unbreakable? Who's unfakeable? There's a little bit of that at this show, but for the most part, it is a strong ecosystem. You don't hear kind of some companies you go in there and it's like, they're gouging me on licenses. Customers are fighting it. What are some of those undercurrents and that you hear?
Yeah, this isn't a show that you have a lot of really distinct religious battles. I mean, I guess if any religious battle, it's, we want you to believe in open source, which, again, it's a trend that's proliferating. There's obviously a little bit of competition that Red Hat acknowledges. They're competing with Docker, they're competing with Pivotal Cloud Foundry, the Cloud Foundry Foundation. They're competing with the web, which is, essentially, or not the web, public cloud, which is competing with all of IT. So they've got large competitors, to a certain extent, some trends, they've got some tailwinds behind them. but at the same time, they've also got, they're only a $2 billion company versus, a $100 billion Microsoft or a $100 billion Oracle. So, they are who they are. I think they're comfortable with who they are, but, they've got challenges as well as opportunities.
Yeah, Brian, you've been spending a bunch of time looking at the cloud native pieces. Give us your assessment. How's OpenShift stacking up? Are they making good progress?
The thing I've been looking at, and we look at this every time we go to an open source driven event, is where are the customers? Are customers paying for the technology, or is it just proof of concept? I think the thing I heard this week with OpenShift was we're seeing more customers. We're seeing customers deploying things in production. We had a number of them on here. Are they huge numbers yet? No, not yet. PaaS has always lagged behind IaaS to a certain extent. But I think as you look at the OpenShift ecosystem of technology partners, the customers, I think it's growing in strength, and I think it's growing in not just its maturity, but customers feeling comfortable saying, I can put applications on those types of platforms.
Yeah, so many good guests, Brian. I mean, it's one of those, so we have our guest of the week, we have our Women in Tech a week. There's too many. It's a just riches of guests here. The JPL guys, the Women in Innovation. Lots of great customers doing really cool things. What jumped out at you?
I think you're right. We get a chance to do a lot of really good shows, and they're like your kids. You don't love one more than the other. But this week was this really interesting mix of inspirational people, like we said, going to space, helping to cure cancer, communicating with doctors. But then we saw people saying, look, I'm running mission critical applications, I'm running banking applications and transportation applications. There was a lot of sense of reality to this show. There was this mix of reality and inspiration, which, we're joking around, we're out here in the heart of Silicon Valley, the TV show Silicon Valley is making fun of certain things, but there was a lot of reality this week, and I think in a crazy technology world we work in, that's refreshing.
Yeah, it's funny. The community and the participation, is definitely something that it comes through here. You see people, engaging on things, talking about, lots of ways that they actually participate, and that it proved it's not just lip service. I mean, right. Absolutely, Red Hat is committed to open source, and you see the kind of the way that they, it goes back to what Jim Whitehurst said. They're not looking to lead it; they're looking to catalyze it.
Right. Yeah, I think the thing this whole week has been very interesting. You always look for sort of check boxes and so forth. If we look at Red Hat, I think portfolio-wise, their portfolio is getting very broad. It covers a lot of areas. The partners that they're working with, like for example, we've been at previous shows. John Furrier and I said this at DockerCon. It wasn't completely clear from a Docker perspective how they want the ecosystem to act. Red Hat is very clear with their ecosystem how they want them to act. They want to meet together upstream, work on open source, and then they're going to bring products to market. So you got a sense of who they want to be, how they want the ecosystem to interact with them, and we heard over and over again from customers, whether it was on screen or off, they like that they get a chance to collaborate with each other and with Red Hat.
Yeah, and actually just from our team standpoint, this is the third year we've done this show. It's a great partnership. Anybody that was at the show, we've got phenomenal location right here in the lobby of Moscone West. People, when I'm walking through the booth area, they're like, oh, the cube's here, and you look like game day. So it is Red Hat sponsorship that brings us here, but they understand the independence of what we're doing, and they are comfortable with what they're doing to allow us to engage with their customers, engage with their partners, and share the stories, the open source stories. Your friend Lee Day working on these, some really cool things where they're creating documentaries that aren't focused on product, but about that broader mission of open source itself.
Yeah, it was an inspiring week. We saw a lot of good things come out of here. Sometimes we hear about technology and it's about getting rid of jobs or changing industries. This was really about a lot of positive things. I think Lee's team should be commended for that. I think just the overall community, not just Red Hat, but the whole community wanting to come here, talk about their stories, wanting to share, that's a great thing.
Yeah, so as we come to a close, I want to give a big shout out to the whole SiliconANGLE media team. We've been doing a bunch of shows already this year, have many more on tap. You go to siliconangle.tv, you're going to see a list of all our upcoming shows, as well as the event pages for all these shows. So just as if you watch this show live from that SiliconANGLE TV page, the replays are all there. I know the team down in Santa Clara is wrapping up Hadoop Summit. We have a few good shows coming over the summer. I'm going to be at an MIT show. We've got an AWS regional event, Inforum's coming on. By the time we get to the end of the summer, there's VMworld, and boy, we have a big schedule coming up in the fall. But so much content, and really appreciate everyone that's been watching our program. Always feel free to reach out to us. Give us your feedback. Tell us what shows we should be at, what guests we should have on, any other tips that you have. So once again, thanks so much for watching everything. We are a wrap here from Red Hat Summit 2016. You've been watching theCUBE.